So let's start with the big news from today, sir. The Governor General swore in a new cabinet. We saw 9 new faces and 3 familiar names dropped from cabinet. What are your main takeaways from today's announcements?
You know, one of the first things that struck me is, well, first of all, you've got a bunch of new ministers, and I think it's fair to say they bring some good capabilities to the table, and they're going to be tested early with some of the topics that you've just mentioned. What I see regionally is my first reflection. So you've got 2 individuals who've been named, one for economic development in Northern Ontario, one in Southern Ontario. You've got former Minister of Defense Sajan named for Pacific Development out on the coast. You've got a minister with specific designation to Quebec. And just being in meetings here in Alberta the last couple of days, I can tell you in this part of the West, people are saying, we're going to get some recognition from the new cabinet shuffle. And I think there's going to be some fault lines that will come out of this just on a regional basis in terms of perception.
All right, sir, jumping to the 2 big meetings that are coming up, we've got the G20 and the UN Climate Conference in the UK. What are some of the big topics that world leaders will be discussing at these meetings?
Well, big is the key word. You're 100% right. I mean, if you look at the G20, this was formed about 20 years ago. We can never forget Canada's role. Canada actually was the first chair of that group of people. Group of individuals. So 19 countries plus the EU, but there's always been concern at the UN that this undercuts the UN. There's other countries who want to be in on it. 2/3 of the population of the world is represented, about 80% of the trade. So the issues there are going to be significant, and it's going to be a great test in a way, not just for our new Minister of Finance, ongoing Minister of Finance, Freeland, but you've got, for instance, Mary Ng, who has I've dealt with her in the past, and she's a smart woman. She's going to be called on in terms of looking at what about issues that some that you've already mentioned about inflation. What are countries going to be doing to curtail these things? So Canada has played a significant role in the past. I think it still will, and we should be. And of course, always be prepared and watch for the inevitable protests that always surround the G20 meetings.
All right, and now we're seeing a lot of attention at the coup in Sudan. We saw Marc Garneau condemning it. What are the major implications of this on the world stage?
Very sensitive time. I mean, there's no time that is a good time for a potential disaster like this. But if we look back to what happened in times of turmoil in the last 3 decades in Sudan, Darfur, of course, many of your viewers, I think, will remember a humanitarian crisis, 400,000 lives lost. I can remember at the time I was at a meeting in the United Nations, and I asked the ambassador from Sudan to the UN in the midst of this crisis. I said, "What can we possibly be doing related to the crisis in Darfur?" And he simply said, "What crisis?" So there's a history there of really some in Sudan not really paying attention to what's going on. Canada, again, will be tested here. We've just upgraded our status in January 2020 to ambassadorial level. The U.S. has just announced they could drop the $700 million they were going to give to funding in Sudan. That means the government in Sudan and their new military leader, who now says he's not going to hand over the reins of patrol, maybe till 2023. They're going to be looking to Canada for funding. If the U.S. steps back, there could even be a request on the military side. This has a backdrop to our pulling out of Afghanistan. So our new Minister of Defense is also going to be called on here, as long with our Minister of Foreign Affairs, the new minister there, Jolie, a really critical time.
All right, sir, just about 45 seconds here. I'm going to bring this back to Canada. Inflation is also a growing concern among Canadians. What is affecting the Canadian dollar's purchasing power right now?
Well, inflation is going to be huge. A big factor coming ahead. 4.4% is the most recent number. That's the biggest inflationary jump since, I believe, 2003. That means your purchasing power, you at the grocery store, what you can buy, taking care of your kids, all of these things are going to be hugely affected, so that the government comes out with ongoing increase in their spending plans writ large. That's going to have a very significant bearing on inflation continuing and your purchasing power and my purchasing power. Challenging times.
All right, Mr. Day, thank you again for joining us today.